Okay, we are live.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. This is Monday, June 21st. It is 3:02 p.m., and this is the regular meeting of the Lincoln County Board of Commissioners being held virtually. First item on our agenda is call to order. I have done so. Next is to establish a quorum. We have all three commissioners present today, which constitutes a quorum. Next item is resolution declaring racism to be a public health crisis in Lincoln County. And I believe Commissioner Hall, you will read that and have some comments, and those may be submitted by representatives of our public health department.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Just some background and context on this. There is really a growing national movement to recognize that racism is a public health crisis. There's a bill in Congress that would do just that. That bill is pending now. There's also a bill pending in the Oregon State Legislature, and as of last week, that bill was still alive in the Rules Committee, and my understanding is it may, I'll underline may, be part of the last minute rush of bills as the legislature heads toward adjournment. But literally hundreds and hundreds of county commissions and city councils across the country have also adopted several proclamations. I can tell you just a few weeks ago, the Lane County Board of Commissioners did this. More recently, the Coos County Board of Commissioners. And I think the resolution will in large part speak for itself. Oh, I should also add that this resolution was developed with the endorsement and support of our local public health advisory committee for the county. And after I read the resolution, if Florence Portal, our acting public health director, would like to offer just a few comments of perspective on racism as a public health crisis in the county, and some of the ways that I believe our public health programs really do seek to address this. But I think as the resolution will indicate, it goes far beyond public health. It's a systemic problem. So, without further ado, I will read the text. Whereas racism is a race-based system of prejudice, attitudes, beliefs, stereotyping, injustices, and discrimination directed to Black, Indigenous, people of color, that's BIPOC, and other marginalized populations. And whereas racism deprives BIPOC communities and other marginalized populations of the dignity, respect, and ability to meet basic human needs that every person deserves. And whereas racism can be both personal and structural, and whereas hundreds of years of structural racism in the United States has deprived BIPOC communities of access to wealth-building resources, access to adequate housing and education and healthcare, and the effects of that structural racism have persisted and compounded through time. And whereas racism is a paramount social determinant of health, keeping access to the resources that create opportunities for health, including housing, education, and employment, and is a persistent barrier to health equity for Lincoln County residents. And whereas, in addition to having an independent influence on the social determinants of health, racism in and of itself has been proven to have broad-reaching and direct negative impacts on individual health incomes. And whereas the American Public Health Association finds racism to be a barrier to health equity and has named racism a driving force in how these social determinants of health are distributed. And whereas anti-racism is a process, a systematic method of analysis, and a proactive course of action rooted in the recognition of the existence of racism, including systemic racism. Anti-racism actively seeks to identify, remove, prevent, and mitigate racially inequitable outcomes and power imbalances between groups and change the structures that sustain inequities. Whereas the Lincoln County Public Health Advisory Committee has encouraged the Board of Commissioners to adopt a resolution declaring racism to be a local public health crisis, and whereas all people deserve to be treated with dignity and respect. Whereas Lincoln County is made up of many diverse communities, including First Peoples who have called this land home since time immemorial, as well as many people of color, despite Oregon's founding as a state that excluded Blacks from living within its border. Therefore, be it resolved by the Lincoln County Board of Commissioners that we join other city, county, and state governments in recognizing racism as a public health crisis, recommit ourselves to combating its destructive generational impacts. Lincoln County government will continue and expand its commitment to ongoing actions to welcoming and serving all persons, regardless of racial identity, skin color, national origin, sexual and gender identity. And we need to scroll a little more, it looks like. Lincoln County government will promote anti-racism in our daily work and participate in, encourage, and help to facilitate frank and open discussions about race, and these discussions will be integrated in our daily work together. Lincoln County government will continue to broaden and deepen its commitment to providing public health services and promoting individual and community well-being for every individual. And be it further resolved that we encourage all residents of Lincoln County to join us in this commitment to a joint, just, and equitable society for all. Florence, were you prepared to just offer some comments, kind of expanding on the message of this resolution?
Yes, good afternoon. First of all, I just want to say thank you so much for putting this resolution forward. I think it's so important, and for government to embrace the anti-racism work. So thank you so much for this, Commissioner Hall. As you know, it is very well evidenced and researched that across the country, racial and ethnic minority population experience higher rates of poor health and disease compared to their white counterparts. And this really is evidence across a wide range of health conditions, such as diabetes, hypertension, obesity, asthma, and heart disease. And some populations have a life expectancy that is lower than the life expectancy of white Americans. And for example, the life expectancy among Black African Americans is 4 years lower than their white counterparts. As you also know, COVID-19 has really put into the bright light what racism and systemic racism has done to communities of color across our communities. And I think at this time it's really difficult to ignore its impact. I just wanted to point out as well that our community is diverse and grows in diversity. Every year. We have almost 10% of our population who identifies as Hispanic, Latino, Latina, Latinx, which is quite significant. We have other minorities who live in Lincoln County, a very small proportion of Black or African American people from the American Indian and Alaska Native communities, Asian folks, Pacific Islander and Native Hawaiians. And so when you look at the total, kind of like the proportion of our minorities, Black, Indigenous, and communities of color in Lincoln County, we have over 13.5% of the population who belong to a racial minority. So I think it's pretty significant. And it is very important that we ensure that we conduct government and provide services with a very anti-racist lens. And so you ask what we've been doing at the Public Health Department in order to do that. So I think a major achievement for us has been to recognize the initial barrier of language, okay, and ensure that we are making our communications and our services as culturally accessible and as possible, and recognizing that English is not the only language that is practiced in our community has been a tremendous step. So I think really this, we have now like a policy within our organization that is, if we're putting a message out, it does not go out until it is translated in the second main language spoken in the county. So I think this is really important because language is the first significant barriers or issue that people are likely to encounter when they try to access services. The other main point of priority, at least in my mind, and what I would like to advocate for, is that we can't really have a genuine anti-racist approach without being educated as to the history of the state of Oregon, the racist history of the state of Oregon, and all of the discrimination and trauma that people of color and minorities have experienced, generations have experienced, and also are continuing to experience in our state. So I think for me, the next steps are going to be to offer education and training so our people are well equipped and have the capacity to serve, to realize how racism can be at play in some of our institutions, and then be able to deconstruct it and move that work forward.
All right, very good. Thank you, Florence. Anything else, Commissioner Hall? You're muted. There you go.
Sorry about that. My mute button was being a little recalcitrant, but really nothing more to add at this point.
Okay, Commissioner Jacobson, thoughts, comments, questions?
Yeah, just the one comment I want to make beyond what was already said is that I think this is important not just for us as an institution, but also to kind of set the way and be the light for other institutions and organizations in our community as well. I think hopefully by doing this, we'll have others follow. And I will say that in the COVID-19 pandemic, I think our recognition that we need to do a better job serving that community, not just from the county, but from, I think, a lot of organizations was very apparent. And I have seen just a tremendous amount of change and ideas and creativity and collaboration with other sectors of the community that I would say I don't think we had a year ago. So I think we've already made huge progress towards this, and I know we have many other partners Samaritan and the Extension Service and others that have been great collaborators in reaching those audiences. So just thanks for the work we have already done, and thanks for your comments, Florence. And I'm looking forward to the work that we continue to do around this.
And I would just add that I think certainly the COVID experience or the COVID pandemic has, I think, heightened my awareness of some of the injustices and those groups that are most adversely impacted by the COVID. And I think that is consistent with recognizing racism as a public health crisis. And last comment I'd make is I think this certainly is consistent with the resolution that was passed, I believe, in 2019 about diversity, inclusion, and equity. Certainly this is a part of the equity aspect of that resolution. So again, good work to all in our public health department, our partners, and I think the fact that others, or we are joining others that recognize this issue is a positive step. So with that, I would be happy to entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I would move that we adopt Resolution 21-21-6A, declaring racism to be a public health crisis in Lincoln County.
I'm looking at you. Go ahead.
And I will second that motion.
All right, any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
And that resolution passes. Thank you. All right, next on our agenda is the adoption of the consent calendar. These are routine items or items that have come before the Board of Commissioners previously. At this time, if staff or commissioners wish to highlight an item, you may do so. Otherwise, I will entertain a motion to adopt the consent calendar as presented.
I'll make a motion to adopt the consent calendar as it is presented.
I'll second that motion.
All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, that motion carries. Next item on our agenda, I believe, is a discussion or a decision item regarding an order about reopening Lincoln County buildings and facilities. Assistant County Counsel, Kristen Ewell.
Thank you, Commissioners. Christy, do you want to go ahead and put that order up on the screen? And so there's been a lot of discussion. As you know, Governor Brown's executive order declaring an emergency related to COVID-19 is going to be expiring on June 28th. Along those lines, she's indicated that she wants to reopen the Oregon economy and lift most, if not all, restrictions, and that would be for masks and other issues with restrictions in the workplace. So we have proposed this order for your consideration. It seems like for the last year, we've been reacting to things instead of, having some time to plan, and that's just the nature of when you respond to a health pandemic. But now that we do know that we are fast approaching the 70% vaccination rate, we're proposing that the county reopen county facilities starting on July 6, 2021. So as you recall, we closed public access to all of our county facilities, but that means it didn't mean that public could not access. It meant that they had to make appointments or they could access services online. So we're proposing now that this executive order is set to expire, that we propose you reopen county facilities on July 6th. And then could you scroll down, Christy? Employees who have been telecommuting would also return to work unless they have made arrangements to continue telework or have an accommodation, whatever they've arranged with their supervisors. Facilities such as the jail and the health centers, health and human services, and also transit, it looks like those restrictions for masks will likely still be in place if you operate in any of those departments. And then could you scroll down further? And then that's it. You have any questions?
Commissioners, questions or comments?
I do have a couple of questions. One is I believe that at least the guidance I saw was that while I think Governor Brown had a projected date of lifting a lot of the COVID restrictions by the end of the month. I actually think one of our goals was the 21st. I'm not sure if that was reached, but by the end of the month to lift a lot of restrictions. I also saw somewhere that a lot of state agencies and offices wouldn't necessarily open back up to the public till September. So I guess I just wanted some thoughts on how this maybe fits into that, because we do have state courts in our building, which has been operating already throughout this time. But I guess I'm just looking for some thoughts.
I think and my understanding is that there already are some state offices that have been open. And I think I know what you're referring to. And I think she indicated, so any kind of offices that still have remained closed, that by September, those will be opened. But I think some are already opened.
Okay, thanks. I think the DMV is still closed, or at least my last go around with them was still that it was closed. I think additionally, I think this is a different conversation, but I think that buildings being open and accessible in the way they were previous to COVID, I think is one thing. This order kind of clears that up and opens that back up. I think we still need to have another conversation internally about certain activities that we were doing pre-COVID, because buildings being open is one thing, but large public meetings and hearings and those types of things in an in-person format is another. So I am, supportive of this order, but I think there's more conversation to come.
Okay, I would agree. Anything else, Commissioner Hall, or I'll entertain a motion?
I would move that the board adopt this order reopening county facilities on July 6, 2021.
I'll second the motion.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
And that resolution, or order, passes. All right. We'll move on to discussion and information items. And the first is a drought declaration presented by our Commissioner Jacobson and County Council Belmont. I will note, I think this is about the earliest in a year that we've ever had a conversation along droughts. With that, Commissioner Jacobson.
And actually, I was in executive session during the drought meeting today, and so I had Council Belmont attend, so he is going to provide the update.
Nice delegation.
Wayne Belmont County Council, and as to your comment, Chair Hunt, there's a lot of firsts we've had in the last few years, so this is just continuing on with that trend.
Absolutely.
And as you may recall, we have a group of folks that get together on an informal basis that meet with Commissioner Jacobson and myself to talk about the conditions that are existing in the county and what we might do towards looking at not just a declaration of a drought, if that's required, but also looking at questions about conservation, curtailment of usage, all those things that are the reaction to a drought when so declared. At today's meeting, we actually had quite a few attendees who represented the actual water utilities in the county, the larger water purveyors. Of course, the county does not provide water. That's not a business we're in. And so we look to other communities. A lot of them are municipal systems. There are some small districts that have provide water. In fact, as we were looking at this issue, there are 53 different purveyors of water in Lincoln County, from small community systems serving 10 or 15 folks all the way up to municipalities like Newport and Lincoln City, the largest. And so in the meeting today, we had a lengthy discussion about the timing of doing the drought declaration. And I say that because it's pretty inevitable. The trending that we see, and it's I think that all of us can see out there, is that the conditions are earlier than we've seen in a long time and heading towards the fact that we're going to be doing a drought declaration. It's not if, it's going to be when. And that was our discussion today. We talked about activities that are already being undertaken by a number of municipalities. So for instance, the city of Walport informed us that they are already utilizing their secondary water resource to provide water for their patrons. And will be then moving forward in what's called a stage 1 alert for their community. And that entails some different voluntary conservation efforts, a lot of education and information that goes out. And it's very early in the year to be doing that. Others are looking at the same kinds of things happening in the not too distant future. What has changed in the last year or two, actually dating back to when we did our declaration back in 2019, is that some of the largest water utilities in the county have formed a consortium. And they are called, I want to make sure I get the name exactly right here. It's the Mid-Coast Conservation Consortium, Water Conservation Consortium. And it consists of representatives from Newport, Lincoln City, Seal Rock Water District, Toledo, Yachats, and Walport. Who get together to make sure that they're uniformly providing information to folks about the impacts of droughts and other conditions that may cause a shortage of water in our area. It's hard to believe, of course, that we have shortages, but we do in Lincoln County. And so they have been meeting informally, trying to organize in terms of providing information and education resources to their communities. And they are coming up on a meeting happening this Wednesday. And so our discussion was about, again, with these water purveyors providing us information, when is the timing for when we should actually seek a drought declaration? Note that a drought declaration is not a specific trigger event. There really are no set criteria for when we ask for a declaration. We've got some indicators that are historically looked at, including flows in main water sources like the Siletz, the Alsea, Ekman Creek, some of these other areas that you look at. But a drought declaration can be a linchpin for having the necessary conversations and institution of conservation and curtailment activities. And so that's why there's a great deal of interest in that process by other water purveyors in the county. About what the county is intending to do. After our discussion today, we have a recommendation we'd like to make to the Board of Commissioners. And this was really precipitated on some discussions we've had earlier on. And that is that there's no formal system to declare a drought watch. It's all either, we're monitoring the situation and boom, we declare a drought declaration, an emergency immediately. And that's the way it's historically been. But there's nothing that says, how do we put people on notice that this is coming our direction and start taking steps, undertaking personal steps as well as institutional steps to deal with what's going to be a shortage coming up. And so one of the things that we would like you to do today is to actually, just by voice vote, take a motion and declare Lincoln County on a drought watch. Again, this is an informal process, nothing established by law or formally in law anyway, but that at least puts everyone on notice that we need to be thinking about our water usage in the coming months until rains return in the fall. So that's the first part of the recommendation. The second is that given the way things are being forecast right now, the drought impacts that we're going to see, we anticipate very strongly that we're going to ask you to make a formal declaration of a drought next Monday. Because the Conservation Consortium is meeting this Wednesday, they're going to gather together and put together the kind of messaging they'd like, uniform messaging across the county that will inform people what that means to them. And for all practical purposes, what is that going to do? How is that going to change water usage in our county? They will put together that information and provide that back to us so that we can incorporate that into our declaration next Monday. So that's really the two-step process that we're recommending at this time to move forward on this particular issue. And with that, I didn't go into much detail. There is information available. It will be included in the Drought Declaration about what stream flows, what the U.S. Drought Monitor determinations are, fire concerns. All that information will be provided in our resolution making the declaration next week. I'd be happy to provide any updates if you want any, but now I'll just turn it back over to you for any questions you might have.
Questions, commissioners? Commissioner Hall?
No questions. I think the presentation's pretty self-explanatory.
Commissioner Jacobson?
No questions from me. Thanks for carrying the weight of that meeting, Wayne. Appreciate it.
Well done. All right, I believe we were asked to, on a, I guess, an informal basis, declare the county under a drought watch.
I will make a motion that we put Lincoln County under a drought watch.
I'll second the motion.
Council Belmont, is that motion acceptable or what you're looking for?
Perfect.
All right, if there's no more discussion, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
That motion carries.
And just
All
to
right.
make sure if any of the media are listening, the drought watch means that we're moving inexorably towards a drought declaration. Just puts people on notice that that'll be occurring very shortly.
Very good clarification. All right, next will be a discussion on the firework ban enforcement. Sheriff Landers, been a hot topic lately?
Yeah, I think so. And I guess this is really in response to the, anyhow, for the record, Curtis Landers, Lincoln County Sheriff, but I believe this is in response to the recent City of Walport passing an ordinance which bans fireworks, not just illegal fireworks, but all fireworks within the city limits and but not on private property. Their ordinance is prohibiting it in all parks, streets, public spaces, and the sale of within the city limits. It's as a result of, again, as we talked about as you just talked about with the drought, the fire danger. That's really the main purpose for doing it, and also the fact, as Council Belmont mentioned, where they're already on their secondary water source, so they're just taking some precautionary measures to hopefully reduce the fire risk that comes with all fireworks within the city. And it's my understanding that the commissioners have received constituent input supporting a ban of this type in the county areas. And I guess it's kind of come to me, what would my enforcement be in that as far as from the sheriff's office, which is, as you know, 4th of July weekend, the time that we have fireworks during this time it's already difficult for us to enforce any of the statutes on the books. Our call load's already high during the 4th of July weekend. We already do not allow time off. We have people on overtime just to keep up with the general duties. So it would be difficult. It's not that I disagree with what Walport did as far as their purpose to reduce fire danger, but as far as enforcement, we're still looking at how, since we have a contract with the city of Walport, what that's going to look like within the city. I know that initially talking with the city, they want an educational purpose. They are going to put up reader boards on Highway 101 going in and out of the city so that the citizens know that there is a ban. And we're just going to kind of go back to that educational first and only enforce those really outrageous violations. So I'd be happy to any questions or further discussion on this, depending on where your views are on this.
Commissioner Hall?
Yeah, Sheriff, and I understand this is a prohibition, has been mentioned, on sale and use, and I'm sure the argument can and will be made that anything that reduces the availability of fireworks at a time of high fire danger is a good thing. But at least anecdotally, I've heard through the years, and I wonder if you would want to weigh in on this, that the really outrageous violations are often caused by people who have already brought fireworks into the county when they arrive for their 4th of July weekend. And in many cases, they're carrying products that have been purchased legally in Washington state, though are prohibited under Oregon law. So just any thoughts on that aspect of this?
Sure, Commissioner. Yeah, usually our enforcement and is on the illegal fireworks. Obviously, there are several fireworks that are already illegal, and the nuisance that they bring, and also fire danger, mainly, I believe, because they, those illegal ones that come from Washington and other states. We won't just put it on our sister state to the north. Fly and can really go into those areas that, grassy areas, dry areas, and forests, this type of thing. So really we receive most of the complaints because of the nuisance part of what they do, the loud noise and that type of thing, not necessarily the legal ones, but it's also probably, I can also say that people know they're illegal, so they call and report those. I don't know if there was a ban on all fireworks, if we wouldn't receive the same number of calls, knowing now that those are illegal too. So it would be difficult to say. Obviously, there's a reason why the state of Oregon has made the ones that are illegal, and a lot of people know and come to our state because they're not, and the nuisance that they provide. So again, those are ones, again, as far as enforcement for the illegal fireworks. If we added to that, I just can't imagine that. And if the commissioners were wanting to still go that direction, I would even recommend we bring in our fire districts to see if somehow, they have enforcement ability over some statutes relating to fire. And if that's the main purpose, I would see about bringing them in. And of course, I know during this time of year, they're staff resources too, but they may be a partner to help with enforcement if that was the direction the commissioners wanted to go.
Thank you. I don't have any further questions at this time.
Commissioner Jacobson.
Yeah, I do have a couple of questions. I guess I want to back up a little bit. And previous to the city of Walport passing their firework ban, actually had sent me an email and said they were thinking about doing this. And I had Assistant County Counsel Jerry Urbridge, weigh in. And I guess what I would like to understand, because from county council's perspective, there is already a pretty robust firework policy. And so I guess my question to you, Sheriff Landers, is not including what the city of Walport recently did, but before that, when am I as a citizen allowed to set off fireworks, and where am I allowed to do that?
So there are certain dates for the sale of fireworks in the state that vendors can set up and sell fireworks. That date hasn't come, it's coming up. I'd have to look and refresh my memory on the actual dates that is to occur. But it's still my understanding that residents can set them off anytime. I may be wrong. I'm not turned to legal on this one, or I'd have to research that and get back to you. I know there's a certain restriction on the sale, but I don't know about actually setting them off for the public. Council Belmont?
Yeah, this is Wayne, Belmont County Council. Maybe the easiest way to explain what we can do in Oregon is to say what's legal and what's illegal. And there's a very simple explanation. Oregon law bans possession, use, or sale of any fireworks that fly, explode, or travel more than 1 foot into the air or more than 6 feet on the ground. Those are illegal. There are certain legal fireworks that are allowed otherwise there. And I think that as you're discussing this particular problem, at least from my many years of experience, mostly as a neighbor who sees these going off in my neighborhood quite often, the fireworks that are occurring in what is during the firework season of, mid to late June through the 6th or 7th of July are illegal fireworks. They clearly are fireworks that aren't allowed under the law. So that's a simple explanation of what we have to deal with.
And I think, because of what they do, they fly in the air. They're more noticeable to, again, as Councilman Belmont pointed to neighbors. For the ones that are legal, and Lieutenant Bertner indicated that they're open for sales June 23rd this year. You know, they're usually confined to maybe a driveway, private driveway, this type of thing. I know in Walport in the years past, especially on the 3rd of July, and they are having fireworks public display this year. Typically, sometimes those fireworks do go into park areas, street areas, and I think that those are the areas the city's really trying to avoid with their emergency ordinance to keep from fire danger down. They're still fine in a private setting. You know, not intended to a driveway that's being very responsible, or a family in a driveway that's being very responsible setting off legal Oregon fireworks they purchased in the state. They're not trying to refrain from people doing that.
So if I have a legal firework that I purchased legally in Oregon, that's allowed in Oregon, am I allowed to set that off anytime I want to?
Yes, I believe so.
I mean, I guess my thoughts on the matter is, I mean, I absolutely agree with people with the fire risk that we're facing this year. And as we learned last year, we absolutely can have devastating wildfire in this county. So I completely agree with the sentiment. I guess a couple of things I'm worried about. A is certainly enforcement, but I guess also if fireworks are being pushed off of streets, you know, and off of, you know, city parking lots and that kind of stuff, and end up in private homes, I'm, you know, more worried about fire starting there, where there's possibly, you know, more debris and more trees and things like that than there would be in a street. So I absolutely agree with the fire protection part of this. I guess I'm struggling with the best way to achieve that. So I'd like to hear from other commissioners.
Mr. Chair. Yeah, this is the struggle in my mind. If we truly had an indication that a prohibition on the sale and use of fireworks on public property was going to be an effective enforcement tool for the sheriff, then I'd say yes, by all means, but let's do it. But what I'm starting to hear here is to say we've banned fireworks sale and use, but you know, frankly, I did not realize, but it makes sense that the Walport ordinance does not apply on private property. And I don't know, I'm going to guess I've received probably 15 to 20 emails, and the vast majority of themselves identify themselves as residents of Bayshore who understandably are very concerned about the potential danger of fires being set by fireworks. But say someone has rented a vacation rental home in Bayshore, they come to that property and they have supply of fireworks that are legal in Oregon. Unless I'm missing something, Sheriff and Council Belmont, there would be absolutely nothing prohibiting them from setting them off on that property that they have rented for the weekend. Am I correct?
If it's worded the way the city of Walport did, that is correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, well, I have a couple of questions and thoughts. First of all, I think we all know that the beaches are under the jurisdiction of state parks. So even if we passed an ordinance, it would not apply to the beaches. Second of all, if we passed an ordinance or an order, it would apply to only the unincorporated areas, and yet, other than the city of Walport, I believe most of the legal fireworks stands are within the incorporated other cities that are incorporated in the county, so it would have no impact on the sale of legal fireworks. And so I think the last question I have is really when you look at the illegal fireworks and the challenge of fireworks in general over the 4th of July weekend, Sheriff Landers, How many people, what size of staff would it take for you to effectively enforce the existing laws? Because it doesn't do us a lot of good to create more restrictive laws if there's not available resources or the necessary resources to enforce it. So how many people would it take to just enforce the existing laws?
Well, of course, thinking about it, I was actually talking with Lieutenant Mertner earlier, saying if we had 8 more staff over that weekend to put on basically per shift, we could adequately do that. Obviously that's a pipe dream, with the budget situation, but that's really what it would take because again, just take fireworks out of it. Our call load in general substantially goes up over a weekend like this, where we have so many visitors and just kind of the activity that sometimes it brings for a summertime activity such as the 4th of July or any holiday weekend that brings in a lot of visitors. So, we're already, down positions for a number of reasons. And, I just threw out the number 8 and, I just think adequately we could do it if we had that many to do. We try to take some proactive measures, especially to the fireworks, because last year was a really bad year for illegal fireworks complaints that were received around the area. We think a lot of it's due to COVID and not having the public displays, that people went and got their own displays and were setting them off. And so having the public displays obviously is going to help a little bit this year, we believe. But we're also, especially with short-term rentals, we worked with the city of Yachats actually on this. We created a flyer talking about the dangers of illegal fireworks, what they can do to pets and this type of thing. And we sent them out to all our short-term rental properties and to the city, so that at least trying to be a little bit proactive, educational response ahead of time to let people know. We let people know it's a crime, that you can be, with illegal fireworks, you can actually be arrested for it. Obviously, it would take a very severe situation to make that happen, but it's not just a violation. It is actually a crime on the statutes that you could go to jail for. So we just want to remind people that, and we want people to enjoy themselves when they come to the beach. But again, think about the nuisance it provides, the noise, the pets, the fire danger, everything that goes along with them over the weekend, and go to those public displays, I guess. I know this wasn't intended to be a public service announcement, but really, if public is listening or the media is listening, really get to those public displays. That's what they're there for, to bring the public out, because they take a lot of precautions area for all that, and they have a lot of things in place to make sure that it is a safe viewing area, safe viewing display for the public. So it would take a lot of people to actually adequately enforce it.
And that's the existing regulations. So, Commissioner Jacobson?
Yeah, just thinking out loud here a bit, at least in my inbox, the people that I've mostly heard from, or I think all that I've heard from, have been people kind of in that surrounding Wallport area, mostly people in the Bayshore area, that want what the city of Wallport did to be extended into them. Understanding more now about that ordinance and where it is exactly in effect, and that it doesn't impact private residences. If I think about the Bayshore area, beaches are already protected under state parks. We don't have any county parks, which I believe we don't allow firework use in county parks anyways. What could be done just for that Bayshore area? They do have their own road district. Could they ban fireworks on their roads, which then would be sort of in alignment with what the city of Wallport was doing? I'm just trying to think about, how that particular neighborhood, which I am worried about people, kind of learning or understanding that it doesn't apply in that area and rushing over to that area. So, is there some tools or things that we've done specifically for that part?
Well, this is Wayne Belmont again. What I would suggest is it's, again, a question of enforcement. The issues that come up, whether they be on streets, the beach, or whatever, is illegal fireworks. That really is the crux of the problem. again, I'll talk a little bit about a personal experience. I sit out in my own yard with a shovel and a charged hose every 4th of July because I'm freaked, with the amount of illegal fireworks that go on in the area in my little community. And it's not very large at all. It's not anywhere near the size of Waldport. So if you're looking for, what you want to do, it's really enforcement. And it's not just Bay Shore, it's across the county. If you enforce the existing laws, and remember that definition of what's legal and what's not, and just thinking of your own experiences there, the illegal fireworks, you can deal with that now, whether you're on private property, you're on public property, you're on any property. You can't set off, you cannot use, own, or sell these particular fireworks. So I think you've got the tools in place already. I don't think you need any additional regulations. You need much, much, much more enforcement and education. Really, it should be something that common sense should prevail in a situation like this, and people should understand this is not what you want to be doing in these locations this time of year.
Other questions or comments? Go ahead, Sheriff.
I was just going to add to that, it's also weighing the public interest and people that do want to come over to the coast and enjoy themselves safely and responsibly, I think is the main thing that we want to do. We don't want to put deputies in the situation of having to use force for a fireworks complaint, I don't believe. I think that's just something that even if we had the enough enforcement, that would be difficult situations to put deputies in. And again, I understand the dangers. I think really a strong education approach to the fire danger in the county, and maybe the county looks at billboards or reader boards as they come into the county to talk about the fire danger and use fireworks responsibly. Something like that, I think it really sets into someone's mind that, okay, well, I'm going to come over and enjoy myself. Reasonable person, most people are reasonable, are going to take that consideration and take the precautionary measures that they need. But again, it would be one of those, even if you, again, go back to Commissioner Hunt's question, if we have enough people, it's a difficult one to put deputies in the position to go out and enforce because there's going to be use of force situations for that. And I just don't want to see that. It's not the type of activity that I want to see deputies doing that. And, especially you're talking about, children participating in fireworks. I just see it going wrong in a lot of different ways, and I think the main message should be is fire danger and be responsible.
Well, I think that kind of summarizes my position. I mean, the regulations are on the books for illegal fireworks. I think an effective educational program, effective public messaging, certainly including where public displays will be and what days and times, I think can help address the situation. And clearly, if there are truly outrageous situations where illegal fireworks are being used, those very worst situations aren't necessarily going to be ignored, but it's a question of allocation of resources. Is that a fair summation, Sheriff?
Yes, it definitely is. And I think I was going to also one point to address Commissioner Jacobson about what can an area like Bay Shore do. I think being a homeowners association like Bay Shore, I think they could create their own rule in there that, obviously is a civil rule, not enforceable by the deputies anyhow, and take some type of penalty action against residents if they choose to go that route, just like they do for whatever rules they have on the books now that they enforce civilly with penalty or however else they do. So maybe Council Belmont can clarify that, but I think they absolutely could take that if they wanted to.
Council Belmont?
Yes, you could. What you would do is obviously have rules, and as they do, HOAs have conditions, covenants, restrictions. And if somebody violates that, you can always hold the owner of the property responsible. So if you rent out your property and somebody does something that's a violation of those rules or regulations, there are mechanisms you can do it to penalize the property owner. And that is another mechanism.
Other questions or comments commissioners?
Well, I guess to sum up at this point, I'm not convinced that us adopting a measure banning fireworks use or sales in the unincorporated areas would have any measurable impact on fire safety. So at this point, I'm not inclined to take that action.
Any comment, Commissioner Jacobson?
I have to say, I'm still sort of on the fence. You know, while I understand that enforceability is a problem, there's also other laws we have, like wearing your seatbelt, that is difficult to enforce, and we still have it. So, yeah, I'm a bit stuck. I do think that Sheriff Landers, you know, questioned early in his presentation about fire districts and what ability they may have, you know, to help enforce or educate is a good question. Granted, the night of the 4th, they're typically pretty busy doing public firework displays and that kind of stuff. And that's where we need them to be to make sure that that is safe. I'm certainly a fan of putting up reader boards or any of those educational things as well. But, you know, as Council Belmont just presented to us, we are in a very dry situation here. So, you know, I do worry about fire, but I'm still not sure if this is the right tool or not.
Well, I would certainly agree that with a drought, fire is going to be a great concern. But I kind of go back to the fact that, you know, without the ability or the resources for effective enforcement, you know, I guess I also fear creating maybe, you know, false sense of security or a false sense of hope. So I guess at this point, what would my fellow commissioners like?
Well, as I've indicated.
Well, what I was going to suggest is that maybe we ask staff or the sheriff to follow up on what you know, what might be done or how great an impact involving the fire districts might have on enforcement, since I think that's the underlying issue. And, you know, I think, or I guess it would be my expectation that those departments are as busy and short on resources as is our sheriff's department, sheriff's office, as well as the other law enforcement agencies in the county. So I think it's worth a discussion, but I think we'll probably hear that they have the similar challenges.
I think that sounds like a path to at least have that follow-up from staff.
Okay, we could have a follow-up report on the Monday, the 28th, and I suppose in theory, if we felt so inclined, I'd be able to pass some kind of ban ordinance with an emergency clause. Is that reasonable, Council Belmont?
Yes, what I would suggest actually is I think that the sheriff actually noted the efforts that would probably produce more results. And that is working with groups like the Fire Defense Board, which is all of the rural fire protection districts together in the county here, in an education process. I think I really liked the idea of the reader boards at every entrance to the county that identifies the drought conditions we'll be in by the 4th of July. We know we're going to be there 4th of July, and that, you know, there's a increased fire danger, and illegal fireworks, you know, can be a cause of those. So I think that maybe we can work that direction and enhance the kinds of efforts we make to inform people about the conditions in the county and the fact that illegal fireworks are dangerous.
I'm okay with that, but I also don't think it would hurt to at least have some kind of conversation with, well, maybe it's the Fire Defense Board or the fire departments.
I can reach out to the Fire Defense Board Chief, Commissioner, and find out where they are on that.
Go ahead,
Commissioner
go ahead,
Jacobs.
Commissioner Hall. Go ahead, Commissioner Hall. You were waiting.
Oh, sorry. You guys.
No,
have
I
the size of my
didn't have
string.
anything else. No, I didn't have anything else at this time. Thanks.
I was just going to say that I think both approaches, I think talking to the Fire Defense Board about, their ability to help enforce and if they think this would be a useful tool, as well as working on some of the educational pieces are important. I think both can be done. But I just have to say from a common sense approach, even with lack of enforcement, I think about possibly having to put in a drought in the next 2 weeks, that we put in a drought and then we're still allowing fireworks. That just doesn't necessarily make sense to me. So I think if we could have staff reach out to the Fire Defense Board to have that conversation, as well as work on some educational stuff, I think both of those things are good.
All right, I think we've given direction to staff. Any further comments, commissioners? Sheriff Landers.
One more thing, Commissioner, just a reminder too, that fireworks sales will begin June 23rd, just in 2 days from now. So, and I know again that this will just be in the unincorporated areas, so the cities will be still okay with selling them. And I don't know how many stands we even have outside the cities. Probably not too many anyhow, but just knowing that sales will be going on starting June 23rd.
Which, as you noted, is Wednesday of this week. All right. If there's nothing else on the fireworks enforcement, we'll move on to the building fee increase. And I believe our building inspector, Al Ames, and planning director, Hughesing, will be presenting this agenda item. Although as I look at the list of attendees, I don't see either of them present. Council Belmont,
I'm going to punt to Assistant Council Yule because I think this is part of the fee discussion, which is the next agenda item. I haven't been involved with this particular request.
okay. All right, well,
Yeah, this is Kristen. I have not been involved in that either. It's a separate process that they are initiating. I don't know, Christy, if you can just give a call to Mr. Eames and he could call, or if you even have the link. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'll call Anna one moment.
why don't we move on to item D, which is Lincoln County fee schedule for 2021, and then we can come back to the building fee increase, if that's agreeable to my fellow commissioners. Okay, Kristen.
Okay, could we put the fee schedule up on the screen?
Christy's probably making a phone call.
Okay.
Well, we tried. So do we have any musicians? We could use a little Jeopardy music right about now.
Well, if Jerry was on, he would tell us a joke.
Anno, I just talked to Anno. He's hopping on right now.
Okay, great.
Okay. All right, we'll wait for Anno. And then Christy, Kristen asked for the fee schedule when we come to her next on the agenda. Director Hughesing, welcome. We're here to hear your comments on the building fee increase for the planning department.
Well, I think they're a good idea. And on a more serious note, thank you for the record, Anno Hughesing, the director of the planning department. Mr. Chair and members of the commission, you'll remember a number of weeks ago, we had a substantive conversation about the building permit fees. They had not been raised in many years. I do recall very well the commissioners making a point of also telling us that what we don't want to do is have sticker shock for members of the community when we raise fees, that we ought to do it slowly, gradually, rather than wait till, and then hit people with a big fee increase. So with that instructions in mind and understanding that our building fees had not been raised in years, so we put that 5% proposal in front of you. We spoke about that a number of weeks ago. I still believe our fees are quite reasonable, and contractors that work in many different communities often remark how affordable our fees are. And again, most of our department is not run. A great amount of our budget is fee based, like many planning and building departments around the state. Ultimately, if people are making demands on the system by taking out building permits and planning permits, there are fees attached. That's the way it is all over the state. And it's really to make sure that the average taxpayer isn't in effect funding development, that this is a user fee on the people that are using the system. So that's always been the approach. We've received really no negative feedback about the fee increases from any of the people that we deal with. I think they understand it's just part of the cost of doing business. And Commissioner Hunt, I do remember you talking about that yes, we should try to, if we're going to be doing these things, do it incrementally, because we are all concerned about the affordability of housing prices, and with it's just been getting worse. So again, I think this is a reasonable professional response in terms of trying to continue to meet the needs of the public as we go forward. So if there are any questions or any further dialogue, I would be pleased to engage in that.
Is the proposed increases a part of the fee schedule that's presently on our screen? Does somebody know?
The building fee increases?
No.
So I think it got put on the schedule today, and that's why Christy made sure that I was here Christy Peters made sure that I was here to respond because it was up.
Well, I'm not comfortable just in effect approving a blanket increase. So is there some document that shows the proposed increases for the planning department? Kristen? Although you said you already weren't involved.
It would be whatever they published, and so I don't know what was sent for publication. And that, yeah, this has not been part of my process. Did Lily send something to Christy? I'm not sure what.
You know, Mr. Chair, under the circumstances, because there's, I would suggest then we kick this into another week. Let's make sure that it's teed up properly. Because we find ourselves, here with a lot of dialogue. I think it's a responsible proposal. There's been a lot of dialogue already, but at this point, it might be best to move this into another meeting then, so we can be better prepared.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with the concept. I think certainly incremental increases in our fees is, as you said, better than sticker shock. I think you indicated it's been a few years since we did increase
a number of years, yeah,
building fees. So I'm comfortable with the concept, but I'm not comfortable without having a detailed understanding, or at least opportunity for a detailed understanding of the actual changes being proposed. So before I yield to my fellow commissioners, Kristen, if we defer the discussion on the building fee increases until next week, will that create a problem as far as implementing the new fee schedule effective July 1?
It should not, as long as they can bring their proposals next week. So they're on.
Can you get those to Kristen or Christy before next Monday?
I promise on a stack of Bibles, I will be, or code books, I will be more than happy to appear next week. We'll take up this matter again, and we'll have that paperwork in front of us. And we can deal with the matter then, especially glad to hear it doesn't somehow hold up the rest of the fee increases.
Okay. Commissioners, questions or thoughts?
Nothing beyond what's discussed. We really can't act on increases if we don't have something in writing. But again, I think the case has been made that some kind of adjustment is necessary. And if we have a written proposal ready to bring to us next week, I'll certainly be willing to consider it favorably.
And Commissioner Hall, that paperwork exists. All of this is in writing already. It's just, alas, in the press of business, I didn't realize it was coming up today. And so that's why it's not in front of us. So it's just a matter of taking what's already there and making sure that I'm properly ready to engage you on the matter.
Commissioner Jacobson.
Yeah, I am fine with the process moving on till next week, and I don't have any other comments until we see the proposed fee schedule and discuss.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll see you in a week, Director Husen. All right, we'll move on to the fee schedule in general, and Assistant County Counsel Kristen Yule.
Thank you, Commissioner. So if you could just scroll down. So you've already seen the proposed changes from, the first one is actually, could you go back up, Christy? Sorry. Okay, that's fine. Okay, go ahead. So the DA's office has already proposed, you've already seen these changes. We have, so Christy, you're using an old, the one that was sent 2 weeks ago, and I sent a new one, but it's fine. I'm just gonna list what the new fee is. So for community corrections and probation department, they would like to propose a county work crew increase. It's currently up to $450 a day. They would like to propose up to $650 per day. So that is a change from the last time we met. The DA's office fees are the same. So you can scroll down. This is the same proposal from Health and Human Services. They have a 3% increase across the board. Go ahead, scroll down. Okay, go ahead. And then on the Sheriff's Office, which I think is the next page. So there is a new Senate Bill 554 that's going to increase the concealed handgun license fees. The initial issuance of a license would be $100, and then it would be $75 for a renewal. So that would be an increase to the current fees. We've included a footnote just to indicate that. So for individuals after this passes in September, those fees are going to be automatically increased. So that's just kind of a process issue. Otherwise, all the fees have remained the same. So if it looks acceptable, we can bring this back again next week to see if we have any comments from the public. And then I can prepare an order for next week's meeting for approval. And then they would go into effect July 1st.
Commissioners?
That process and timing's acceptable to me.
Same.
Yep. Okay, we'll see this again next week, and it'll include the planning department proposed changes.
Great, thank you.
All right, well, that moves us to reports and our COVID vaccination update presented by Florence Portpel, our interim public health director. Welcome, Florence. Welcome back.
Thank you, Commissioner. Can you pull up the slides, please? Can you move to the next slide? Thank you. So June 2021, well, within the past week, we've seen 22 cases. So not liking that very much. So as you can see, we have a 22 case increase from last week. We have 3 more hospitalizations. So I'll discuss those a little bit more in detail on the next slide. Next slide, please. All right, so cases so far in June, 33, as I mentioned, 22 in the past 7 days. I mean, when you put it in perspective, it's only 3 cases a day, right? But it's 3 cases too many in my mind. I like remaining low. So I apologize because I don't think those slides maybe are fully up to date, but cases are mostly in East and South County, majority of them in the Toledo area, and then in other area. The population, those cases, 6 of them were under 18 years old. The majority of them between 19 and 52 years old, and then 4 over 60, and 2 of those 4 are hospitalized. Interestingly, most of those, well, actually, the majority of these cases, so 20 out of 22, are unvaccinated, and 2 were in the middle of their vaccination series when they contracted COVID. Next slide, please.
And you froze at a critical comment, Warren.
Oh no! Am I unfrozen?
You're okay.
All right.
I hear you.
What was the critical comment? We don't know.
Well, maybe it was my system that froze. You were saying that 20 out of 22 cases were.
Yes, 20 out of 22 were unvaccinated, and 2 were in the midst of completing their series. So they had received 1 dose and were not yet fully vaccinated. So we have 2 current outbreaks. One so far 7 cases associated with it. Another one we just opened today, I believe, has 2 cases. 2 are workplaces. So just like to give you a sense of the amount of contacts associated with the cases. So we have about a little bit over 6 cases, 6 contacts per cases. Interestingly, I mean, it's a little bit disappointing as well, is that the team reported experiencing less cooperations conducting the interviews. And so what are the household contact, which is good. And, especially when people have gone places or have attended events or, gatherings, then we are not necessarily getting the information. So just as a reminder, it's when we interview people, it's to ensure that we are controlling the possible spread of the virus and the disease, and so it's quite an important part of the process, and especially I want to put a plug out there for non-vaccination, right? So we know some people don't want to be vaccinated, and this is their choice, and fine. There are a lot of people who do not have a choice. Okay, kiddos under 12, they don't have a choice at this time. People who are immunocompromised do not have a choice. So I think it's very important for people to remember that, and remember that by letting us know who you've been hanging out with or around, we will be able to, help with preventing further spread and protecting those folks. And also the other piece to remember is that if somebody is a contact of a case and the person is fully vaccinated, they don't have to quarantine. So if this is what worries people, the majority of folks in Lincoln County are actually vaccinated, eligible in Lincoln County are actually vaccinated. So it's very likely that some contacts will not have to undergo quarantine. Next slide, please.
So Florence, before you move on, I may have missed this. Can you provide any information? I know it can be limited by law, but what about the 2 outbreaks?
Yeah, I don't know if I can share this.
Okay.
At this time, just because I'm unsure of the amount of employees in each
Location.
Yes.
Okay.
So I will. I will touch base with the team, and I can provide that information later on.
Okay. Thank you.
And you're welcome. So vaccinations. Lincoln County, man, we're doing really good. We're past the 70%, which is very exciting. And the state of Oregon is almost there. As of Friday, we were at 68.5%. So when we reach the 70%, as we've discussed a few times now, there will be a lot of restrictions that are going to be lifted. I know some people are worried about this. And I just want to also provide clarity, right, and options. Because it's not because the state requirement to wear a mask is lifted that as an individual, if you feel more confident wearing a mask, you can keep doing that. I was in a meeting with the state health officer on Friday, and there was also some conversation around the fact that businesses can still require mask and social distancing if this is what they want to do. So, and as you know, there are still going to be areas of our lives that are going to necessitate us wearing masks and keep on remaining socially distanced. And this is the healthcare system, the transportation system. So, and of course, airports and likely airplanes. Yeah, this is where we're going. We're going to a more normal return to normal, I guess. Next slide, please. All right, so as I mentioned, so depending on what population group you're looking at, so if you're looking to the 16 and older, we have passed the 70% of people being vaccinated. And if you look at the 12 and older, we are almost at 70%. So as I mentioned, for the past few weeks, our increase is pretty incremental. And so usually we are between 0.6 and 1.2 point increase. And so this past week was 0.6% change. As you can see, we're definitely looking at some zip codes that are starting to really pop out in terms of like the proportion of people being vaccinated. So the good thing is that because we're driving our decision making based on data, this week, next slide please, we are going to do various clinics. So tomorrow we have a clinic at the Toledo Library, as well as so this one is open to the public. The one we have in the afternoon is going to be at the Heaven in Lincoln City, and it's really focusing on survivors of wildfire. So we're pretty excited about that. On Thursday, we have a collaboration with the Salmon River branch in Otis to offer a clinic there. We're having a second dose clinic at La Jocolita. Well, actually, it's any first dose could walk in as well. And on Saturday, we have a clinic at the Taft Fire Station. So as you can see, we are keeping up the mobility of the vaccine offer. I just wanted to put out there that we had a very successful event on Saturday at the soccer game. I think we vaccinated over 44 people, so that was great. And quite a lot of them were first doses, which is really exciting too. Next slide, please. Any questions?
Sorry, my grandson was enjoying being back in the house, so I had to close the door to the room. Commissioner Hawley, you were indicating you had no questions. Commissioner Jacobson?
Well, I just was going to say that when I showed up at the soccer game around 10:30 with my son, there was a line for vaccines. So I was really happy to see that. I feel like sometimes in leadership, you know, when you have a great idea and you make staff come in and do it on a Saturday and you show up and no one's there, I was going to feel really bad. So I was just really happy to see that there was a line and people getting vaccinated and a lot of first doses. So I'm really glad that was successful. I know that the Soccer Association too was really happy to be a part of that.
Well, thank you. Keep coming the good ideas.
The only question I have, being a resident of East County and noticing that East County generally was at the bottom of the list, which is not a good place to be on most lists. What's maybe being done to try to address the low rates of vaccination in those areas?
Well, so we have been bringing quite a bit of clinics to those areas. We are working on getting a sign, like one of those billboards up. And so unfortunately, a lot of them are already completely booked, but we have one that we're going to be able to put up, I believe, mid-July. On the road from Grand Run to Lincoln City. So and I really want to focus the message around, you know, like protecting each other, taking care of each other. So there is that. We have a video that is almost finalized. That is about to start being played on various TV channels. And it's all about the importance of getting the vaccine and how, you know, vaccines have been really helpful in the past against like diseases like smallpox and polio, and how we've been able to really change lives of people and families in the last centuries thanks to them. So really try to discuss the history as well as showcase a few business owners and workers in our county. And really kind of like moving away from kind of the government and really like letting people talk about why they got their vaccine. So this is almost finalized. And then we had a few, like I said, we had a few events last week, and those were unfortunately not very successful, but we will keep on going. And if anyone really has any suggestions as to where we could go in East County, who we could partner with, please let us know and we'll take the show on the road.
All right. Sounds like we might need to have a couple of soccer games in East County.
Bring it. We've heard about softball, so maybe if they play softball in East County, we should show up.
All right. Any other questions, comments on the COVID update? All right. Thank you, Florence. Appreciate it. Keep up the good work.
Commissioner Hunt, we just received the fees from the planning department. If we could have Anno present those really quick.
Okay. I assume that's okay with my commissioners, fellow commissioners. Go ahead, Anno. And I assume we'll get them on the screen.
Yes, they're about to come up on the screen, and as I noted, and I'm glad I was correct, of course, we had these broken out already, but because of the good work of your staff and my staff, now we have the numbers up. I assume they'll be up on the screen in a minute. And what you'll see when it comes up on the screen that I have here now is a comparison of what our existing fees are, and then another column after that, what the proposed fees are. And again, it's my understanding this represents a 5% increase. So I will give your folks, Christy or Casey, whoever's pulling this up.
Working on it right now. I gotta get into
Yeah,
my
moment.
email.
And so, ultimately, well, I'll keep talking then, because that's what I usually do, and I'll do it now. Buy us a moment here. So, again, if with for instance, a conditional use permit currently costs $925. With the proposed fee increases, that would be $980. If that sounds like a lot of money for people, please understand how much staff time it takes to do a conditional use permit with all the notice, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, and so for instance, a variance right now, again, a labor intensive process, $825, that would go up to $870. And so what you'll have here in a moment is, yep, I can see it's about to pop on your screen. There's a side-by-side comparison, just broken down across the board of what our major fees are and what they would be. So you see the heading is current on your screen, and then proposed. So there it is, a before and the after, straight up and down based on those percentages.
Christy, can you scroll down unless commissioners have questions on what we reviewed?
Well, and remember the last time, because it's already been a month or two since we've had a substantive conversation about it. The only thing that's really new and interesting is the one fee that you'll see there having to do with major project. And again, that would be used extremely sparingly at the discretion of the planning department to ask for $7,500. I think it's $7,500. And again, so what I would say as an example of a recent project that demanded tremendous amounts of staff time was when Georgia Pacific was redoing their landfill. And that was only a conditional use process, but we had, it would seem like dozens of pre-application meetings and huge staff report and so many things going on. So I'm not even sure if we had been in a position to charge the $7,500 that we would have come close to paying for the amount of staff time that went into a major project like that. So, and in fact, when we have a major project like that, I think our understanding was I'd almost certainly touch base with our county councils, and I would also touch base with whoever the liaison is on our commission and say, hey, this is a project that's coming up. Looks like it really merits being considered a major project. And my perspective, last time we talked about this, and you were anxious to hear what the thinking would be, if I would never even propose doing it unless it was completely obvious that this was just like the amount of time and energy it took to do the Georgia Pacific application. That if it's close call, we're not going to do the major project thing. It's got to be really a compelling situation. And when those few come up, we sure know what they are. They're not subtle. They require an awful lot of work. And again, just doesn't seem fair to charge someone the same fee for a major land use fill application that required so much time and energy. Doesn't seem fair to charge the average mom and pop person out there the same amount of money for a very, very, what in consideration is a minor conditional use permit that doesn't take that much staff time. So that was just really disproportional. So that was really outside of the 5% across the board. That's the only substantive difference. We've created that opportunity to recoup at least some of those costs that our department would assume taking on those applications that others provide for us.
Questions, commissioners, or thoughts?
No questions. Oh, one comment though, just a reminder that permit fees for fire survivors are still waived, so a lot of this would not apply to that.
Thank you, Commissioner Jacobson. That's of course true.
Commissioner Hall?
No comments or questions here.
Okay, I have a question. Appeal of commission action has gone from 435 to nothing? Or is it off to the right that I can't see it?
I suspect it's off to the right because we wouldn't have done that.
I don't see anything.
It might be remaining the same, I'm thinking.
I'm sorry?
It might be remaining the same fee. No change.
Oh, okay. All right. I guess I thought anything that was on here had a change, so, okay.
I was thinking too, it might be an oversight, but if it's not listed there, then it shouldn't be increased.
Okay. But on the other hand, we're not going from 435 to 0.
I would never advocate for that. That's
okay. So
nor would you wish to advocate for that.
Procedural question, Kristen, do we want to bring this back? Clearly there's a consensus to approve these changes, both the ones you've discussed and Director Husing have discussed. So do we want to bring this back for a decision next week? Or I don't know, is it appropriate to consider a decision now if my commissioners are in agreement?
Mr. Chair, I'd prefer that we bring it back next week. Often we don't get much, if any, public comment on proposed fee schedule revisions, but just to provide an opportunity, if folks do have questions or concerns to weigh in, I would appreciate taking this to next week.
I agree with Commissioner Hall.
And I agree with the both of you. So we'll see this on next week's agenda. All right. Thank you, Director Husing.
Thank you.
All right. Back to the agenda and the Echo Mountain Fire update. Public Information Officer Miller.
Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, I'm Casey Miller, Public Information Officer. I know Katie will probably touch on her work with the grants and legislative dollars she's been securing and how she's going to use those funds possibly for septic and water systems and lots of things. So I'll let her talk about that. I'm going to touch on FEMA and, a reminder that we are continuing to meet with FEMA bi-monthly, and last weekend, just yesterday, actually today, should have been their last day for what they're calling Fema Re-Engagement, and it's an opportunity for folks to come to the Otis Fire Station and have in-person interaction. And I know certainly from my experience and talking to fire survivors and getting the various calls, that's a really important event to have, that in-person event. And we've yet to find out what those engagements look like, but next week we should be able to tell you more about the Fema Re-Engagement events and how productive that was. FEMA as well, and this is kind of less for the public, but ultimately will benefit, I think, our community, is going to have another peer-to-peer event. I believe we'll be having individuals from Butte County and also Paradise give us the opportunity to talk to them about recovery. The last time that they did this, I know we found it tremendously useful. So that's one event that is coming up for us. I think that'll, bring positive results. Also with FEMA, we're working with Anna Hurt on community planning and capacity building. And it's really been great to have her as an asset there. I think Roy will probably touch on Debris Management Task Force. I think they're really getting closer and closer to being finished up there. So that's going to be wrapping up, they're saying, in the next couple of weeks with debris management. I know Katie had a chance to join the long-term recovery group last week. We had those long-term recovery group individuals also meet with us at our bi-weekly recovery team meeting, and they're really making a lot of progress. So Katie, if you could maybe talk a little bit about your observations from that meeting as well, that'd be useful. But I think tomorrow when we have our internal recovery team meeting, we'll definitely have more to bring back to you next week about the activity that's happening in Echo Mountain. And I would say Lily Glasgow, thank you, did get us septic and building permits issued for May. The last time we came to you with this, it was April, and it looks like they've had 11 on-site permits, about 7 building permits. So that just continues to move forward, a little bit slower than April, but still activity is happening. So I think with that, I am going to pass the torch to Katie, and then maybe after Katie, if Roy has anything to add, that would be good as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Jacobson.
Yeah, thank you. So I did attend the long-term recovery group meeting for the first time last week. We kind of intentionally, I think, stepped back a little bit as the county to let them, we were given advice from FEMA to let them, kind of self-organize and us take a back seat. So we did. They also finally changed their meetings where it was not meeting during our BOC meeting. So I was able to go to that. Long-term recovery group is a group created not just for the recovery of Echo Mountain, but is an emergency management post-recovery tool. And so this group is going through the articles of incorporation right now with the goal of, again, not just recovery for Echo Mountain, but to be here for long-term recovery for other types of emergencies and disasters we may face as a county. So I'm excited to have that group up and operating as it is sort of an ongoing tool in the toolbox. They have several different breakout groups, including essential needs, government, and that kind of stuff of the group. So really just kind of getting their feet up and under them and going. But we have a lot of faces from the community that we already know and work with, from nonprofits like Habitat for Humanity and United Way and others, and a lot of new faces with newer nonprofits that have started up because of the fire. So it's kind of a good mix of experience and fresh energy, I would say. Moving on to some other things, I feel like this last week, at least for me, has been receiving a lot of funding that I put in for a while ago, which is a whole another thing. It's exciting to write the grants and work with the legislature and funding sources to get it. And then once you get it, you have to deal with it and stand up the program. So I've been working on that piece. We did get $725,000 from the state that finally hit our account last week. And that money is to extend our core mental health program. So have a meeting with our core team later this week to make sure they're ready to go with extension of that program. And then we have money for private wells and spring-fed systems for them to do testing on their system, not of the water. There's already resources for that at the state, but testing of the actual system and possible money for partial replacement if they need to do that. And then we have money for testing and repair and replacement of septic systems, which everybody's on septic out there. So my goal is to have that program stood up with whatever sideboards we're putting in place and a process for doing that within the next 2 weeks. So working with the planning and other entities to try to get that stood up and find some temporary help to kind of help coordinate that effort. It is likely, not a sure thing, but likely that there would be additional funding coming in from the state in the next couple of months to extend those programs as well, especially the septic and water piece. So, this could be an ongoing thing, which is pretty exciting, I think, for our survivors and a huge piece on getting people rebuilt. You have to have a septic tank to rebuild that's working. And a lot of those did sustain damage in the fire to drain fields and some other things. So I'm excited to have some resources for people to rebuild those, as typically FEMA does not cover. And sometimes insurance does actually not cover a septic system or a spring-fed system either, as we're finding out. I did direct Paul Seitz, who works for Lincoln County under Public Works, to start looking at how many properties we have that still are not cleaned up. So he has kind of, as he calls it, a windshield drive-by to see how many we still have that are not cleaned up. Several properties that currently do have rights of entry with ODOT and are waiting for ODOT to come back. Several others that we don't have rights of entry for and that we have been unsuccessful in making any contact with whatsoever. So going to start internally strategizing with legal and ODOT on use of a different tool or a different way of communicating to try to reach out to those people. Saying no thank you is one thing, but not, hearing back at all makes us want to make sure that, they know of the opportunity to get cleaned up by ODOT. And just the last thing I'll say is I'm actually going out Friday out to Douglas County. I was invited out there to go see the fire that they had. And learn more about their recovery efforts and talk to some of our congressional staff and try to be more, I think, coordinated in some of the asks coming to the federal government for rebuilding and recovery because we're experiencing a lot of the same things that community is experiencing. So while I'm not excited to see the devastation they went through, I'm excited to hopefully join arms and have another partner in recovery there. So that's all the updates from me. I think Casey wanted me to pass it on to Director Kenyon to see if he had anything to
add. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Roy Kenyon, Public Works Director. I just have a little bit to add on to what Commissioner Jacobson had talked about. Paul Seitz actually identified 11 properties that, for whatever reason, I don't want to say they slipped through the crack, but we have not been able to contact those people. So he has been working on multiple channels to try to contact these property owners. I know he's put together a letter he's going to be sending to the last known address. He's actually also going to be reaching out to try to contact them by phone. He was going through some information this morning, pulling phone numbers out. And so he's going to try to contact them with every avenue available to give them one last chance to sign up for debris cleanup. And that's really the only thing that I have to add to the conversation.
Okay. Very good. Commissioners, other thoughts or comments, questions? Oh,
Hey, Doug.
all right.
Doug, I wanted to ask you, you have been through some wildfire devastation. I just wanted you to comment on what you've seen.
Well, what I've seen is, I guess, I don't know how to describe it. Everything's burned off the ground, so you've got nothing but dirt. And you've got trees, many of which are limbless, trunks that are, charred black. And there is some recovery efforts to harvest those trees, and we've heard about some of the challenges or differences of opinion and within our own county as to which trees should be harvested and which ones should be left standing. But I'll tell you, it's a pretty bleak, desolate experience when you're driving through those areas that were really, in the heart of the fire. And again, the only thing that's left standing are black tree spires, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, I've yet to view some of the other areas as well, but I really thought that you talked about the scale of it and how it's just almost kind of unbelievable, and I just appreciate, this organization's commitment to continuing to follow through with recovery because, like Roy was saying, well, we have other properties that weren't identified. I think we continue to do outreach. And it's just amazing how, you'd think you wouldn't have a few people slipping through the cracks, but it can happen, So we've got this work we need to continue to do, and I'm glad we're doing it. Thank you.
I guess one other thing I would just add as a compliment to our state partners and our elected officials at the state level. I've been working with Anna Hurt from FEMA, from the community recovery sector, who's been helping provide some internal support, and I've been having her keep track of all the funding sources that are available, all the ones we go after, what they're for, certain ones maybe we don't go after that don't apply to us or whatever, which is a task she's done for disasters and other places. This is not new to her. But she said the other day that she actually had to make a new category on the form that she has used to do this exercise previously, because she has never worked with a state that has had a disaster where the legislature directly funded counties and directly funded communities for recovery. She has never had that happen. It's a new thing. She's never heard of it, and she didn't have a tab on her form for that process. So just a thank you to our state and state government for helping us with this directly.
Yeah.
Yep. Well said. Any other comments, questions? All right, good report, and the work continues, and it's a long-range, long-term process too. So I'm sure we'll continue to hear more. All right, we'll move on to commissioner reports. I'm going to let Commissioner Jacobson go first.
I have nothing else to report. Thanks.
Yeah, you've been a little busy. Commissioner Hall.
Nothing to report that hasn't already been discussed.
Well, in memory of my papa, who would have been 98 on Wednesday, we went to the Portland Buckaroo hockey games, and I'm going to make it 3, which is a hat trick. So with that, we'll move on to public comment. And Christy, you want to show us public comment that we've received in the last weeks since our last board meeting, please?
Hey, Doug, it's Casey. I'm switching rooms.
Okay. You don't sound like Christy.
No, she has run over to our next meeting over at the community college. So
we're looking for public comment since our last commissioners meeting, and I know it can be found in 2 places.
Yeah.
Smart sheet.
One of the things I'm going to do is pull up this meeting and see if any was archived here. And we do have just fireworks ban, it looks like.
Okay.
Okay.
Anything on consolidated into the STR reports?
Let me take a look to that page. So stand by, and I will jump into see what she's got logged for today there. And we'll scroll down. And down here, we have 621. And it looks like
That would be today.
looks like we've got about 8 pages in.
Okay. That's where the public can find it.
Yep, right here at the bottom.
Okay. Nothing more on the agenda, no executive session. So if there's no more business to come before this board for this meeting, I will announce that our next Board of Commissioners meeting will be a week from today on Monday, June 28th at 3 p.m. It will be held virtually. Also announced that there will be a special board meeting for a public hearing on a community development block grant. That will be held on Thursday, July 1st at 3 p.m. And that also will be a virtual meeting. So until next Monday on the 28th, we are adjourned. Thank you all.
And